In this lesson, we'll look at how data analysis typically happens inside organizations. You'll learn the practical processes analysts follow, from exporting raw data from systems like SAP or Salesforce, cleaning and transforming it in Excel, and then finally turning it into reports and insights. Let's walk through this real-world workflow.
So this is what normally happens in the organization. So you have all these systems, we have SAP, we can have, Salesforce. So you have all these systems in the organization, and, every week or every month you export, the built-in reports in Excel. And what also happens at times is the kind of analysis that you want to perform, you just don't have the right report in the system. And in that case, you also have to kind of send a ticket to IT. And that is usually not a easy process, because you send the ticket that these are the data fields that I want. IT comes back, asks for an explanation. So there is usually a back and forth process involved in IT understanding your requirement and you explaining your requirement back to IT. So once you get all the information in Excel, what you do is, because all the information entered in the system are by the people, they are making mistake. So what you have to do is, first you have to do what we call data transformation. You have to clean the data. And what I want everyone to realize is there are very common things that people do when it comes to data transformation. What are some of the things that you do to like clean the data or transform the data? Data transformation means, you are cleaning the data, you are pre-processing the data, categorizing the data. Yes. What about missing values? What about blanks? I'm sure data completeness, yes. Incomplete data, blanks, missing values. Data type, that's correct. Data type, if you have been working in Excel, you would know Excel can actually, identify a date as a number or a number as a text, and vice versa. You kind of fix the data types. What about the spaces, leading and trailing spaces? Who has faced the problem where you have like a space before the text, double spaces between the text, a space after the text? What else? There's one very important part that you're missing, and probably most of you might have experienced this problem. What about duplicates? Getting rid of duplicates where the duplicates shouldn't be there. What about, when you extract things out of the system, you get like really weird looking column names where you don't have a spaces, you have technical names of the field. So you kind of rename column names so it makes better sense, because if you are spellings mistakes, yes, that's right, corrections, 100% spellings. You might also have to change the structure of the data set. At times people will give you a data set which is more in a pivot table kind of a structure, and you have to change the structure of the data set. And if this point is not clear at this time, it will become clear. So you might have to work a bit on the structure of the data set. These are some of the main steps we perform to kind of convert my raw data into the clean data. So let's call it data transformation. Once we are done doing data transformation, what we do is this. Because we are exporting like multiple reports from all these different systems, there is no one single report that gives you all the columns and all the fields you need. So you have, maybe 1, 2, 3, and 4 different data sets, and you perform some kind of a data transformation on all these 4 data sets. Then what you do is you perform like 20 VLOOKUPs to bring all the fields that you actually want from all these data sets. Maybe you want, 3 fields from here, 2 fields from here, 1 field from here, and 4 fields from here. You perform like multiple VLOOKUPs, and you bring all the data into one single place and kind of flatten the file. So once you've done the cleaning, you bring all the data, and you might not be following these steps in exactly the same order, but just kind of think about all the steps that you perform, and these steps will kind of come into the play in your entire data analytics process in Excel. So you flatten the file. And once you flatten the file, you realize that you don't really have all the fields that you want in the data set yet. And this is where calculations come in. So an example can be, maybe you have, total sales and you have total cost, but you don't have a total profit column. Maybe you have a quantity and you have you have the quantity and the price, but you don't have the sales. So you use your Excel functions to add more columns in, and let's call it data enrichment. You further enrich the data because you actually want some of the fields to perform the analysis, but you don't have those fields coming out of the systems organically. So you have to use some of the functions, and that function may be if you're performing some kind of, you're creating some kind of categories based on if, if this, then this is the text. If this, then this is the text. So you're adding few more columns into your data set so you can actually use those columns in your pivot table or pivot chart. So that's what we call data enrichment. Once you have done that, all the fields are in one place. Let's say we have this table and you create. So these are coming out of the system. These are something that you calculate. And all your things like some functions, your if functions, where you're doing some kind of a categorization, some ifs come here. So you create certain columns which do not come out of the system, but you want for the analysis. So once you have enriched the data, then what you do is you create pivot table and charts. You create some kind of a pie chart, some kind of pie chart, column chart, some kind of a bar chart, and that kind of completes the process. Extract the files, you clean it, then you do a VLOOKUP to bring all the columns together in one place. And once you have that, you use your Excel functions to further enhance your data set or further enrich your data set. And once you have done it, you then move on to pivot table, pivot chart, because if you don't perform all these steps and before arriving at pivot table, you will not, you will have problems here. And maybe while you're performing pivot tables and charts, then you realize that you have some kind of a problem in your data set, and you go back and fix the data set. So it's not a straight line process. Usually it's like a circular process.